on Goblin Reddit. Today's story is...
My wife and my stepfather destroyed our families with their affair, but my legal revenge made them pay dearly. For almost 6 months, I noticed something strange with my partner. This revelation ended my marriage and destroyed my existence, as well as causing deep sadness to my mother, so I am not sure which way to turn. Until a few days ago, I enjoyed an enviable life. It was so good that I was often proud of it. From my own experience, openly proclaiming that your life is perfect is risky, like tempting fate. I'm not so naive as to believe that I cursed myself by saying it, but it didn't help either. I think it made the situation worse because I really thought that nothing could go wrong, and now everything is collapsing simultaneously. Well, let's get to the main point. I had an excellent job and was married to a woman called Carol. We had been married for over 2 years, and as I mentioned, I was immensely happy with her. We lived near my mom and my stepfather, Lucas. They both love me and care about me very much, or so I thought. My mom joined Lucas when I was 10. He has been part of my life for a very long time. My biological father abandoned us in complicated circumstances. Mom worked tirelessly to support us, and some years later she found love in Lucas, who was delighted to take care of us. Until now, I never thought of Lucas as just a stepfather. To me, he was my dad and my hero, someone who gave me love and protection. Although we did not share blood or physical traits, he never made me feel that I was not his son. From the moment he married my mom, or even before, he acted like a real father. I understand that this may seem like irrelevant information, but it is not. I want you to understand how much it hurts me to discover that he didn't really care about my mom or me. Let's go back 6 months. That's when I started to realize that something wasn't right. At first, I couldn't identify what it was, but Carol's behavior seemed strange, different. I thought I was just being paranoid, but as the days went by, it became clear that something was wrong with her. I can't describe exactly what had changed, but I felt it. Call it intuition. I sensed that she was hiding something from me, so I asked her directly if something was wrong. Carol explained to me that she was overworked, and that was all she was worried about. Unlike me, my wife is not passionate about her job, but she refuses to leave it. So it made sense that she was going through one of those stages, because she periodically experienced problems with her work situation. Having to work hard at a job you hate is one of the worst experiences in life. I've been there. I want to make something clear. I would never force her to work. She could support us both until she found something she liked, but she always said no, no, and no, so I respected her decision. Later, as strange as I perceived everything, I always associated it with work-related stress. My wife didn't seem too affected, but I decided not to insist. I knew that if she needed my help or advice, she would let me know. A few months later, I began to notice strange behavior towards me from my stepfather, Lucas. With him, it was much more obvious, so I even asked him what was going on. He just said he was nervous about a certain matter, but every time he talked to me, I sensed that he was hiding something from me. No matter how much I pressed him, he kept claiming it was nothing. I became so worried about him that I even mentioned it to my mom. She confirmed that she had also noticed his strange behavior. All these were signs for me to stop inquiring, and I wish I had. Now that I know the truth, I can't just keep quiet. A few days ago, I woke up with a start from a nightmare and noticed that my wife was not in bed. It was around 3 a.m, with no apparent reason for her to be awake at that hour. Then I heard her talking to someone on the balcony. I found it extremely suspicious to receive a call at that hour. My wife loves to sleep, sometimes even more than I do, so there was no logical explanation for her to be on the phone unless something really serious had happened. I tried to sneak up on her. I managed to hear just a fragment of the conversation. She said something like, "If that happens, we'll both be in trouble, and there's no way you'll come out of it unscathed." Something similar. It sounded very suspicious, at least to me, but then she spotted me and hung up immediately. When I questioned her, she told me she was talking to her sister because her mom was sick. Initially, I suspected that she was involved in something illicit, so the next day I decided to investigate further. While Carol was taking a shower, I took her phone. I knew her code, but I needed deeper access. Fortunately, in my job, I have picked up a few technological tricks. Believe me, nothing on your phone is really protected, regardless of the brand or operating system. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. I searched exhaustively, hoping to discover what she was up to, but what I found exceeded my expectations. I discovered that my wife was unfaithful to me. But the worst thing was that she wasn't just cheating on me, she was doing it with my stepfather. Yes, Lucas was having an affair with my wife. I don't know what hurt me more, the fact that the two people I trusted most betrayed me together, or the harshness of the truth itself. I quickly gathered all the evidence I could and left the phone exactly as I had found it. I was so shocked that I didn't even look too closely, but I really didn't need any more evidence. I found enough messages, photos, and videos that unequivocally proved his affair. I didn't want to see the videos, and I still haven't, because I simply don't want to. I only kept them in case I ever needed them as evidence. I can't and still can't believe that they did this to my mom and me. Since then, I have barely exchanged words with Carol or Lucas because I am afraid of exploding with rage. Fortunately, Carol has been very busy with work, which has made it easier to avoid her. I don't even have the courage to talk to my mom. I'm terrified of thinking how much it will hurt her to find out. She loves Carol like a daughter and loves Lucas as much as me. It's time to tell her, but I don't want to be the one to break her heart. However, my mother deserves to know. I just want to find a way to break such devastating news, because saying, "Mom, our partners are cheating on us," doesn't seem like the best approach right now. I don't think there's an ideal way, but I'm looking for something less painful. Update 1. A week ago, I posted here about my discovery that my wife was having an affair with my stepfather. I haven't confronted them yet, but I have taken another step. I now have a plan to expose them in front of everyone. Confronting them privately is not what they deserve, considering that in private is how they have acted behind our backs. I understand that there is no possible justification for their actions. There is no scenario in which this makes sense. Honestly, at this point, I couldn't care less about the reason for their betrayal. Besides, I don't want to give them a chance to justify themselves. I want everyone to see their true nature, without excuses, without anything. After reflecting, I realized that asking for explanations wouldn't change anything. They stabbed me in the back, and this was no accident. For the 3 days after the discovery, all I could think about was how to tell my mom. I knew it would devastate her, but I had to do it, and, thanks to her advice, I found the least bad way to do it. I don't think there is an optimal way, just some less painful than others. I decided to meet her in a neutral place away from home. I asked to meet her alone without telling Lucas. As I had never asked her to do anything like this before, she was very worried. When we met, she immediately asked if everything was all right. I spent 3 days thinking about how to tell her, but when I saw her, I was paralyzed. I had planned every word, but facing her turned out to be incredibly difficult. She asked me again what was wrong. I told her that Lucas had been unfaithful to her. At first, she didn't believe me, but I warned her that something worse was coming, something 100 times worse. She looked at me confused, asking, "What could be worse?" She even asked if he had any interest in minors or something similar, and I assured her that he didn't. I suppose there could be more terrible revelations. But it wasn't easy to tell him that the person he was cheating with was Carol either. He didn't believe a word. First, he doubted the infidelity, but Carol seemed impossible. He thought I was lying, and honestly, I didn't want to show him the evidence because he had only seen it once and it was extremely painful. I didn't want to go through it again, nor did I want her to see it. I suggested it would be better to avoid them, but I also knew that he would never believe me without evidence. So, reluctantly, I showed them to him. When he saw them, he broke down and cried inconsolably for over an hour before partially calming down. Afterwards, we discussed our next steps. She agreed that we should confront them, but she refused to return home that night. She made up an excuse and stayed with a friend. Since then, she has remained there while we plan our strategy. We have organized a family meeting in a week's time and have invited practically everyone. We plan to expose them to the whole family. Mom supported this decision, considering it the best alternative. For now, she is staying with her friend. The family meeting will take place in about a week, and all close relatives will soon know exactly what happened. The next update will be crucial, because once this situation is revealed, it will be unstoppable. Update 2. I will tell you immediately what happened at the family gathering. In recent days, I worked hard to organize everything without arousing suspicion in Lucas or Carol, and I succeeded. My mother was the only person who knew the truth, so keeping the secret was difficult. I looked forward to the day of the meeting. I heard various theories about its purpose. Some speculated about an engagement announcement, others about a pregnancy, and some more eccentric relatives had their own conjectures. Having invited practically the whole family, it became a significant event. When most of the guests arrived, I asked for their attention and explained the real reason for our presence. My mother remained by my side as I looked directly at Carol and told everyone about our discovery of her infidelity. Carol was stunned and ready to refute the accusation. Then my mother stepped in and revealed that Lucas had also been unfaithful to her. And it was no coincidence that they were both unfaithful at the same time. They were cheating on each other. Carol denied being unfaithful to me with Lucas, so I replied, "So you don't cheat on me with him, but at least you've admitted to being unfaithful to me." Before anyone could defend her or question my words, I presented the evidence. Everyone was silent. The only thing audible were my mother's sobs. Lucas tried to approach her to talk to her, but I stood in his way. He tried repeatedly, but each time I blocked him. My mother cried so intensely that she couldn't even speak. Carol's father approached me and expressed his shame at his daughter's actions. He even apologized to me. I assured him that he was not responsible for what had happened. He and his family were speechless. My mother tried to physically attack Carol, but I restrained her. I explained that hurting her physically wouldn't bring me any comfort, but Lucas refused to leave despite everything that had happened. So you know what we did then? We had to forcefully evict him, piece by piece. The next day, my mother threw all of Lucas's belongings out onto the street. As she owned the house, there was no reason to keep him there. I did the same with Carol. We are currently both going through the divorce process. I feel deeply distressed. I still find it hard to accept that this is my reality, because I wake up thinking that it is too surreal to be my life. But when my mind starts to function, I face the reality that it is, and I must deal with it. From there, the day only gets worse. Update 3. After my last update, my mother and I simply tried to move on while we processed the divorces. Mine turned out to be quite simple. Despite Lucas's incessant attempts to communicate with us, we flatly refused. He tried persistently, even showing up in front of my house repeatedly, but I always rejected him. He pleaded insistently, but eventually ceased his attempts. Carol, on the other hand, said little. She just apologized and disappeared. Practically everyone cut off contact with Carol and Lucas. Nobody wanted to keep in touch with them. However, Carol managed to reconcile with her family. From what I heard, she told them that Lucas manipulated her, used her, and forced her into all this. Her family forgave her, and a friend even offered her a job in his company. By then, I was completely indifferent. I didn't think about her or her activities. In my opinion, they were both guilty, regardless of their arguments. But it turns out that I was deeply mistaken. You see, I have a close friend named James, whom I hadn't seen recently. Unexpectedly, he called me asking to meet. When a friend proposes to meet, you accept even if you don't know the reason. When we met, he asked how I was. I told him I was fine, although going through a difficult post-divorce period. Then he mentioned having seen Lucas and having important information to pass on to me. Apparently, Lucas had met him by chance and told him what he was trying to communicate to my mother and me. Lucas knew I wouldn't hear it directly, so he asked James to pass on his message. Essentially, Lucas claimed to have been blackmailed. According to him, Carol manipulated him from the beginning. Somehow, she obtained a photograph of him helping his ex in circumstances that required him to be shirtless. Apparently, she was doing plumbing work, and his had gotten soaked. With these images, she threatened to reveal everything to my mother, making her believe that he was cheating on her. When he refused her demands, Carol increased the pressure, warning him that if he didn't agree, she would not only destroy his marriage, but also abandon him and ruin his life. According to Lucas, Carol only intended to have relations with him once and then leave him alone. He desperately agreed, but that was his biggest mistake. Carol succeeded. She took more photographs and began to blackmail him with greater intensity. Every day, his demands increased, and he had to obey or risk being destroyed. Then, surprisingly, I exposed them to everyone, and they were exposed. From that day on, Lucas has only tried to prove that he never really betrayed us, that he would never have acted like that without being coerced. He left numerous messages for James, claiming to have proof of what happened. James believed him. After talking to James, I went straight to my mother and told her everything, but she didn't trust it. She thinks that Lucas is just trying to get close to us again to manipulate us, and that it's best to leave it all behind. She asked me not to think about it anymore and just to move on. However, on closer analysis, I believe that even if Lucas was telling the truth, it does not absolve him of guilt. He could have refused and faced up to Carol's photographs, but he chose to be unfaithful. It doesn't matter that he was coerced. Update 4. After careful consideration, I decided that it was appropriate to talk to Lucas. Not because his story seemed coherent or could solve anything, but because he had a plan for Carol. So I asked James to pass on my message. I was willing to meet with him. We met, and he first apologized for everything. I made it clear that I wasn't looking for apologies, but to hear his side of the story. I emphasized that my presence was due solely to James. Lucas then reiterated everything James had already told me, but in greater detail. He showed me saved messages from Carol, her threats of blackmail, and how she forced him to behave according to her wishes. They were messages in which Carol threatened to reveal their encounters if they did not continue. I told him I believed him, although I really didn't. The messages showed his desire to end his relationship with Carol, but they did not explain how it began. Even so, with tears in his eyes, he said that I would be the only one to believe him. I questioned why he hadn't told my mother or me from the start, but he replied that he had made the mistake of trusting Carol, who turned out to be extremely manipulative. He said he no longer cared what other people thought, only my mother and I mattered to him. However, I explained that my credibility was one thing, and it was quite another for my mother to accept his arguments. In the end, I was pleased that Carol was no longer in my life, but my mother might forgive him. Only if he genuinely proved that he had been blackmailed from the beginning. And the only way to prove it to my mother for sure was to report and sue Carol. My strategy is basic, nothing elaborate. If what Lucas says is true, then my wife, soon to be ex, will be held legally accountable for her actions. I think that if she really is as Lucas describes her, she should be punished. I have certain doubts. It's not that she's immaculate, because she was unfaithful too. But it's strange to have shared so much time with someone who suddenly transformed into a criminal mastermind. I suspect that Lucas is lying in an attempt to clean up his image, and if that's true, he should face consequences too. The problem is that I don't want to get personally involved, allowing Lucas to act for me. If none of what has been stated is true, he will have filed a false complaint and unfounded lawsuit, potentially facing repercussions. He is confident that I will help him obtain my mother's forgiveness. But I am completely sure that my mother does not wish to forgive him. And I am even more convinced that whoever had relations with my wife, regardless of the reason, does not deserve my assistance. I admit to a certain amount of vindictiveness here. But that is what betrayal by two people so close to you leads to. I doubt Lucas will pursue this, although he seemed keen on the idea of maternal forgiveness. If it doesn't happen, I will come back when the divorces are over to close my story. But I hope that closure will include some justice for my mother and for me. Update 5. I need to clarify something. I will talk about my divorce, not because my plan failed, but to inform you of what happened and then address what you are really interested in, as your comments have shown. My mother has divorced Lucas. I had to put a little pressure on him to sign the papers, as he intended to continue fighting with her. I warned him that this would only further damage his relationship with my mother, and that even if the truth emerged later, it would be too late. The best strategy was to grant my mother's request and try to win her back later. He tried to explain to my mother what he had told me, but she simply replied that it was irrelevant because it didn't prove anything. My divorce was less complicated because Carol hardly cared about our marriage and had already moved on with her life and new job, so she signed without resistance. But if she thought she would have peace of mind, she was greatly mistaken. While the divorces were still being processed, Lucas not only reported the blackmail to the police, but also filed a lawsuit. When this information reached Carol's company, she was forced to resign. At that point, the divorce became more important to her, as her new life was falling apart, but she still signed, simply because she was already dealing with those other problems. As she suspected, Lucas's accusation was false, because there was never any blackmail of Carol to force him to have sex. It just happened, and we will never know the truth about how their affair began, which, at this point, is irrelevant. The only demonstrable blackmail, which mattered little to the authorities, was that Carol wanted to continue their encounters while he wanted to end them. He believed that if they stopped, no one would be hurt, as long as it remained a secret. But Carol threatened to reveal their relationship to everyone. Is that blackmail? Yes, but she wouldn't be the first mistress to threaten to tell the wife everything either. There wasn't even any proof that the alleged photographs Carol possessed actually existed. We will never know if they were genuine. So they both faced consequences. Firstly, Lucas was sentenced to 300 hours of community service for false accusation, as well as a fine of more than $6,500. At the same time, Carol countersued him for false accusation and claim, obtaining approximately another $7,500. Although Lucas's false accusation did not prosper significantly, due to the absence of concrete evidence, it at least produced an unexpected effect. Carol was also sentenced to more than 350 hours of community service. Simultaneously, Lucas obtained more than $11,000 in compensation for Carol's blackmail related to informing his wife. It took months of legal proceedings, but in the end they both paid in different ways, as well as doing all those hours of community service. There are so many that, although it's been 2 months since they started, they still have a lot left to do. And no, my mother didn't forgive Lucas. She was just glad he signed the divorce papers. Lucas thought that denouncing and accusing without evidence would be enough to obtain his mother's forgiveness, as he took severe measures against Carol. But he did not anticipate that she would defend herself. And honestly, neither did I. But in the end, no one emerged victorious in this legal battle. Well, maybe the lawyers, whom I should have charged a commission to. They had probably never seen money so easy.